I once watched the same piece of work get sent back for a change 5 times in one day. Then the exact same kind of work from the same person got approved the next day without a single comment. Nobody could tell you why. Not the person who wrote it, not the person reviewing it, nobody. That's what happens when there's no written standard. The standard becomes whoever's reading it. Where I used to work, the only rule anyone ever repeated was this: it has to be 100% accurate, and ask yourself if this is good enough to put your organization's name on. That sounds like a standard, but it really isn't. It doesn't tell you what accurate means. It doesn't tell you what good enough looks like. So in practice, whether something was good or bad came down to one thing: whoever happened to be reviewing it that day. Here's what easy to miss. People assume if nothing's written down, there's just no standard. That's wrong. There is one. It's just invisible and it changes depending on the day. And here's how people actually survived it. Because I did this myself. When you don't know the rule, you don't ask for it. There isn't one to ask for. So you find yourself an old piece of work that got approved before. You copy its structure, you submit your version, and when it comes back with corrections, you patch it based on whatever comments that specific reviewer happened to write in the track changes that time. You're not learning a standard, you're reverse engineering one person's mood, one round of corrections at a time, and it only ever holds up as well as the last reviewer's notes. Then a new person joins. They start from exactly zero because none of that got written down either. So they do the same thing. Find an old example, copy it, wait for corrections, patch it. The cycle just repeats, person after person, and the actual knowledge never leaves anyone's head. Now, the obvious response to all this: just write the process down. I want to push back on that. There are two ways people think they have solved this, and neither one actually does. First, people think a long document means they have done their homework. It doesn't. I've seen submissions that covered every possible angle, 10 pages deep, every section filled in. It looked serious, it looked thorough, but thorough and consistent are not the same thing. You can write 10 pages and still have no actual standard behind any of it. Just a lot of unchecked writing that happens to be very long. Two different people could follow the same 10-page document and produce completely different results because volume was never the thing that was missing. A standard was. Second, people think getting a manager to sign off means it's been properly checked. It hasn't. All the sign off does is take one person's private judgment and stamp it as official. It feels like quality control. It's actually just where the arbitrary judgment gets legitimized. So writing something down on its own isn't the fix. If there's no real standard behind the document, all you have done is move the inconsistency somewhere quiet, dressed up to look resolved. I want to be honest, this took me a while to actually understand. For a long time, I thought the fix was simply write more things down. It's not enough on its own. I've seen it fall even when the documentation existed. If you're running a business and there's one person everyone goes to because they're the only one who just knows how things work, that's the exact gap I help SME founders find and close. There's a link in the description for a free process diagnostic call. Here's the actual fix, and it's simpler than people expect. For every step in the process, ask one question. Can anyone check this the same way every time and land on the same answer? Let me make that concrete. Say you're reviewing a customer refund request. Did the customer submit the request within 30 days? That's pass or fail. Anyone can check that. It doesn't need a manager's opinion. It needs a rule someone writes down once. But should we make an exception for this particular customer? That's different. That's a real judgment call. And it probably should stay with a person. Most businesses treat both of those the same way. Everything gets sent up to one person's judgment, including the stuff that never needed judgment at all in the first place. That's where the bottleneck comes from. And it's also where the inconsistency comes from, because judgment doesn't hold steady from one day to the next. Rules do. So the fix isn't write everything down. It's separate the two. Turn the pass or fail steps into actual rules. and save the person's judgment only for the handful of calls that are genuinely difficult. Tell me in the comments, is there one person in your business who's the only one who actually knows how something works? What is it? So here's the real test. If that person disappeared for a month, would the simple stuff still run correctly? If you're not sure, that's the gap worth closing. No, not more documents to try. If you want help finding where the gap sits in your business, there's a link down below for a free process diagnostic call.